Hi everybody, welcome back to the channel. I've made a few videos criticizing YouTube fake polyglots and self-help language scammers and basically anybody who makes outrageous claims about how quickly and how easily you can learn a language. As a linguist with a PhD from the University of Pennsylvania and with expertise in language variation, and as a passionate language learner, I try to give a more realistic, evidence-based approach to language learning that will get you the fastest, most effective results with a sustainable study progression and realistic, achievable goals. But I threw that all away when I found out that I had just over a month before a surprise trip to Italy. Not really, but I mean, come on. Is there a better excuse to try to learn as much Italian as humanly possible in a month? Taking into account, of course, other life responsibilities like a toddler and self-employment and even a YouTube channel. I've always hated videos like this one because I think they're bullshit. They set up false expectations, they completely demoralize regular language learners, and they portray recognizing a few thousand words because they haven't been deleted from short-term memory yet as knowing a language. And very often they start with a little disclaimer like, I also studied Italian for 2 years in college and got A's, but I didn't feel like I could parlare italiano. So I won't lie to you. If you want to do it exactly how I did it, you'll need to start with a good textbook and course, and about 10 years before that, make sure you start a PhD in linguistics, and definitely ensure that you've spoken a related Romance language for at least 20 years, and you're certified as fluent enough to study or teach in that language in a university. But with a PhD in linguistics, another Romance language under my belt, and a month of Italian back in 2017, and the excuse that YouTube is totally a real job, and this is a legitimate use of my work time, could I do it? In this video, I'll tell you how far I got. Spoilers, shockingly far. What worked, what didn't, and what actually happened when I tried to use my 1 month of Italian in Florence, Pisa, Rome, and Milan. And no, I won't try to convince you that flailing and floundering and stumbling my way through basic sentences is fluency.
Ieri io ho imparato a parlare un po' l'italiano.
Nor will I try to convince you that meaningful fluency is achievable in only a month. It's not. But hopefully I can share with you just how much is achievable in a small amount of time and what to do next. And also make all of my gelato debt a tax write-off because I have a lot of gelato debt. So andiamo. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones and I am absolutely in the pocket of big gelato. This is Language Jones. So of course, you'll probably want some manner of proof of Italian so you can decide for yourselves if I can actually say anything. I'll add a progress bar, so if you're not into that kind of thing, you can just skip to the rest. Solo studio italiano da un mese, ma nella via quotidiana posso parlare e, più importante, capisco lo che ascolto. Insomma, posso comunicare. La storia è molto semplice. Mia moglie doveva partire per un viaggio di lavoro inaspettato. Io, e certo la bimba, potremmo andare con lei. Avevo un mese. Ho comprato un libro di testo, ho fatto 30 lezioni online e ho anche ascoltato i podcast e usato le app. Ogni giorno ho studiato almeno un'ora, ma di solito ho studiato verso 3 o anche 4 ore. Questo è importante, non solo studiavo frequentando le lezioni. Quando ho comprato il libro di testo, l'ho letto velocemente, prima di aggiungere tutto nel mio mazzo di Anki. Per questo motivo ho familiarità con tutte le coniugazioni, compresi il congiuntivo, il condizionale e così via. Ma non avevo finito quando siamo arrivati in Italia. So, what did happen? Well, let me recap exactly what I did. If you've seen my recent videos, you know what app, what language school, what language exchange platform, and what video on demand service I use. I'm not sure who's sponsoring this video, and so I'm being a little vague here. You'll just have to watch my other videos for more of that. Actually, forget that. I'll do this one unsponsored. I used Babbel a little bit. I really liked their podcasts. I used italki for conversation partners, and I did a whole ass Lingota sprint in like 20 days. So there were days that I was doing like 2 or even 3 lessons a day. And I'd watch Italian content on LingoPie before bed. I'm not saying you have to do all that stuff. They're not paying me to say this as like a bonus content for them. But because I had access to all of it, I did all of it. And my main thing was actually something else. If you've seen the channel before, you'll also know that I'm a huge fan of using the science of learning and of memorization to lock information into my stupid brain. I wish I'd known this stuff earlier. So in addition to everything else, which was a lot, I was doing at least an hour of online classroom study a day, sometimes up to 3. I was working my way through the excellent Routledge Colloquial Italian and dumping as much as possible from all sources into my Anki deck. Here's a good time to mention that most platforms I used and recommended have some spaced repetition and flashcards built in, so you don't have to do all this work. I chose to because I like to have everything centralized and a bit more effort, what neuroscientists call desirable difficulty, in my encoding process for making memories. I only got through about 9 chapters of the 17 in the Routledge Colloquial, and I'll tell you that I wish I had done more of that. It's not about the textbook being good, although it is. It's about the method that I used working. So what I did was first to just read the book, just skim it. Whenever I had free time, I'd read dialogues or grammar explanations just so stuff would stick a little bit better. And chapter by chapter, I added everything to my Anki deck. My current system, which might change, is to have a card which prompts me with English and an image related to the concept that I'm testing, and then has on the backside the word, phrase, or conjugation in Italian, spoken audio generated from HyperTTS, and any image mnemonics that I want, especially if they prime sounds in the words. So for instance, the word for conference is a false friend. My English side says a conference and has a picture of a generic hotel conference room. The flip side has the correct Italian un congresso and has a picture of Congress. It works for me. I've been big on avoiding full sentences, but using chunks. So I have things like last Friday or il burro viene usato spesso, but nothing much longer than that. I'm not a big fan of close deletion. If you like it, more power to you. Now, dumping all that into Anki could eat a month alone. And that means familiarity with a lot of it, but not an effortless command of it because you haven't actually fully learned it yet. And what was wild for me was that over the course of the first week in Italy, I could feel the power of simply reviewing with spaced repetition. I got a lot of that, albeit semi-randomly, with my classroom study, but with spaced repetition software, it was wild. As an example, the first day in Italy, I asked if things were possible by asking, "È possibile?" By the second and the third day, still doing all my reviews in the evening, I'd still say, "È possibile," but then I'd remember, "Si può." By day 5, I was just using si può correctly, and it was like this with everything. Absolutely magical to feel it come online in real time. It's one thing to do your little SRS reviews and feel like you're learning. It's a totally different feeling to randomly need that material every day and note the switch happening as it's happening. But do you even need to learn Italian to enjoy a trip to Italy? Well, the strangest part of the trip was that it took a few days before I could have a lot of full conversations in Italian with somebody whose first language was Italian. They were all on vacation in Times Square. The restaurants and cafes and even hotels were largely staffed by people from elsewhere, using English as a lingua franca when providing services to people who were also coming from around the world. So I got to speak Persian and Arabic and French and Dutch, and I had to actively seek out opportunities to speak Italian. And even then, people would tell me that they preferred English since it was their second language and Italian was their third. So if the only thing holding you back from planning a trip is the language barrier, maybe don't worry about that. Similarly, I would ask everybody about local dialect variation, and it was actually hard to find speakers of traditional Florentine or Romanesco or Milanese or whatever. In Rome, I asked about Roman dialect in a Feltrinelli, a large bookstore that I like, and the woman told me that nobody speaks it anymore and that they had no books on it. Of course, it turns out that they had a fantastic linguistics section with a full series on Italian regional dialects, but the point is that the average person on the street, or at the espresso bar, or in the bookstore, was not a great resource. I have strong thoughts about this exact phenomenon creating a huge bias that has shaped the history of sociolinguistics, but that's another topic for another day. Leave me a comment with Lebove's department store study if you want me to make that. Also, think about supporting me on Patreon if you do, because I am already on thin ice with the rest of the sociolinguists, and this is absolutely taking a shot at their foundational beliefs. But Bill Lebove liked me precisely because I was willing to push back on his ideas, so whatever. Anyway, in Rome, I'd ask about Romanesco and I'd be told, I'm from Turin, actually. In Milan, I'd ask about Milanese and be told, I'm from Genova. The biggest success while I was there was that despite all of that, I conducted sociolinguistic interviews. Were they a full sociolinguistic interview for a study? Absolutely not. But I did get people talking and keep them talking and learn about local dialects in that way. I was blown away when I asked a shopkeeper what time they open on Monday in Rome, and he told me, alle dieci. And later, I came to learn that the affricate chi is commonly lenited in Roman Italian to she. I also had tremendous failures, like embarrassing failures. Even the same hilarious one over and over and over again. Namely, well, you know how they tell you that you won't confuse lei, meaning you, and lei, meaning she, because context will always make it clear? That's bullshit. So literally the first day in Italy, driving from Milan to Florence, we stopped in Parma. I was grabbing an espresso, as you do, and the woman behind the bar asked what brought us. I explained my wife had a business trip and I used it as an opportunity to study a little Italian. She said then, somewhat ambiguously between a question and a statement, I think, "Le parla bene italiano?" And I was like, "No, in effetti lei non parla affatto italiano." Uh, tu parli bene. And I had to be like, "Ovviamente non ha ragione." That was the first day. Super demoralizing. And I did it again like 2 or 3 times in the first 2 days. But pick yourself up, dust yourself off, start all over again. By the end of the trip, I was having much more comfortable, much longer conversations. If I had unlimited time, I would honestly probably just take my time in Duolingo. It was fun and well structured, and I could just schedule it and show up and know I was going to learn something new and review some things that I'd already learned. And so the fun to effort ratio was pretty high and I was definitely learning. If I had it all to do again in the same time frame, however, I would focus all my energy on the textbook plus Anki approach. Remember, I found out I was going to Italy with just over a month to prepare. It's a question of depth versus breadth. 30 lessons in Lingoda gave me a serious amount of depth and comfort with what I studied, but I didn't see all the tenses, moods, and aspects in that time. I've put a link to the Routledge Colloquial Italian in the description, which is what I used with my textbook plus Anki. Leave me a comment if you're interested in the Anki deck. I might make it available for patrons or channel members once I've completed it, if there's enough interest. I might have to clean it up a little bit. So, did I get fluent in a month? Well, it depends on the task. I bought a ton of books and I've been reading and enjoying pretty technical linguistics books with no problem. But I can't yet follow everything I watch on TV, or even more than half of it if I don't have dual subtitles like with LingoPie. I can carry on a conversation, but maybe not a deep one about politics or my academic specialization, despite being able to read for that specialization already. The point is, fluent in a month or 3 months or whatever is almost always a gimmick unless you radically redefine fluency. But where the language influencers actually get it right is that you can learn a lot in a short time frame if you have decent study methods and decent motivation. And if you continue beyond those first successes, you might actually just retain some of what you learned and build on it. If you don't, you might be able to execute a YouTube stunt, or maybe not, but you won't be able to actually retain and use the language because that's just not how memory works. Don't believe me? Try to talk to me in Persian and see what happens. So it's almost that time again. You know the drill. If you like what I'm doing with the channel, please like and subscribe. If you love it, leave me a comment and maybe share this video with a friend. You can support the channel right here on YouTube with super thanks or over on Patreon at patreon.com/languagejones. Until next time, happy learning.